Okay, we're reading from chapter 2, verse 60. यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses. But in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. Practical example is given by Sri Amanacharya, great saint and devotee, who says, Yetavadi mama cheta Krishna padara vinde navanava rasa dhamani udyatam rantumasi tadavadi batanari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara sustu nishtivanam cha. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayor Vacham Shivaikunta Gunanu Varnane. Okay, so in the previous verse, Krishna talked about Param Drishtva Nivartate. And he's continuing that, saying that even if somebody is endeavoring to control, control will not happen. Control will fail. Only Param Drishtva will succeed. Right? That means that only if you have experiencing a higher taste will it work. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah, so this conquering the senses business is not possible. Of course, I mean, in Bhakti, we are also given some basic rules, right? Basic do's and don'ts. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. If we are not willing to follow that, then we should not enter into spiritual life. This is another, what should I say? I mean, as new devotees coming to Krishna consciousness, we should highlight this fact, saying that, if we are not prepared follow these things, then please don't get initiated. I mean, you take your time, and once you are ready, once you are very sure that you're going to stick to these 4 principles, only then get initiated. But generally, people are in a lot of hurry to initiate, get others initiated, either because la puja pratishtha, something, like just some excitement about initiation. But we should be very clear that we should at least not be breaking the 4 regulative principles, right? Otherwise, what is the point in the whole process of initiation? So basic, that much we have to control, as in that has to be followed. There are no other options. No, then there are various others where, like for example, people want to focus on earning money, for example. Now that's a matter of higher taste, right? Because we are so used to understanding, okay, this money, it has to be used in Krishna service, etc. So Unless one engages in service, in serving the Lord, these other so-called sense enjoyment, it will not just go away, right? And if we artificially try to control, it won't work. And that is one of the reasons why in Krishna consciousness, initially people allowed to eat as much prasadam, whatever prasadam they want, they are allowed to eat, because too much of control means somewhere it will burst, right? Which might not be conducive for devotion. So since eating is somewhat like most people are happy engaging their senses in eating, so that little bit of license is given to eat Krishna prasadam, but how much ever, like whatever allowed can be cooked and eaten. Uh, but otherwise, these things cannot be like now this whole topic of sexually getting attracted, etc. Now, while yes, on one instance we are saying that okay, this is basic, that we should not engage in illicit relations. But there are other forms of perverse acts also connected to this, right? I mean, even for example, looking at somebody else's wife or daughter or whatever, at least from a man's perspective, is not. That is why we call others Mataji, but that has just become like matter of usage. There is no real associated feeling that follows, right? So now these things we have to develop higher taste and say, okay, this is distasteful, right? That is what here Yamunacharya is giving us. So one has to become fully Krishna conscious. Fully Krishna conscious means in everything, in every thought. Actually, there's another very nice Prabhupada is saying here, sometimes fall victim material sense enjoyment due to agitated mind. So the mind gets agitated. I've been, like reading Bhagavatam, and repeatedly I'm seeing this, like Chitraketu, he loses his son, agitated. Hiranyaksha dies. Hiranyakashipu is giving class to his mother and sister-in-law and nephews and all that. And in that he quotes Yamaraja coming and talking about how one king who dies and his wives are lamenting. He says mind is the cause of trouble. Then Rishabdev talks to his children, his 100 sons. Then he says mind. So everywhere there is this so much of focus on this mind, mind, mind. Mind is the source of all trouble. That is why Krishna also tells in Bhagavad Gita that mind can be biggest enemy or biggest best friend if controlled. So this mind gets agitated. And what are the reasons for mind to get agitated? All our, mainly false ego, but then other things also. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. So now it's very easy for mind to get agitated with some of these sense gratifying things, and then a yogi falls down. Right? But for a devotee, initially, that is why, initial years, till we develop sufficient Krishna consciousness, we can't actually control these things, right? Because we also get agitated. But here Prabhupada is saying, unless one becomes fully Krishna conscious, which means that in each and every thought, each and every action, Krishna is there in our life, then only we can control. And that is the reason why Srila Prabhupada actually, recommended saying that keep chanting all the time, because we require Krishna's association, right? Krishna's association is purifying. And, thereby we'll be able to control as in because we will get attached to Krishna, we'll get detached from material things. So that attachment has to happen. See, without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease material engagements. So one has to engage the mind in Krishna, right? And that is where then the Prabhupada is quoting Ambarish Maharaj, which we'll discuss in the next verse. Right, and here also, mind has been engaged in the service of lotus feet. Now, what happens if your mind is engaged in service of lotus feet? One enjoys Nava Rasa Dhamani, ever new transcendental humor. And this is very interesting, actually. We may have experienced some of it, we may not have, but always Krishna keeps reciprocating, right? And everything, looks fresh. And this is true in the spiritual world also. In the spiritual world, though, it's the same service that a Manjari or a Gopi does every day, right? Literally, like Ila Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his Lalasimai Prarthana. So he says, Lalasamai. Says that he's Kamala Manjari and his work is to bring camphor. That's it. Right. And so every day it's the same service. Of course, there might be other things also, but it will be very fixed and definite. But there will still be new transcendental humor in that. It won't be boring. Like in the material world, something we keep doing again and again, we get bored. But devotional service is not boring because the same thing we do again and again, still there are newer and newer mellows that we experience. And so he's saying that, because mind is engaged in the service, and I think about sex life with a woman, I spit at that thought. That means that we have to become so engaged in Krishna's service that everything else becomes distasteful. Prabhupada is saying Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing. Automatically matter Indian becomes distasteful. Right? Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janaiti Ashu Vairakyam Dhanam Cha Yad Ahetukam. Is comparing it to a hungry man satisfied by his hunger by a sufficient quantity of not simply eatables, nutritious eatables. And that means it's like it should also nourish you. And Krishna consciousness nourishes the soul, right? So then all this lower tastes kind of become distasteful. Yeah, so this is very, very difficult. Like, for example, I'm fighting few anarthas of myself, and it's a daily struggle, right? But it has to keep going on. Now, on one end, the knowledge comes in and says, okay, this is not right. This should not be done because, Acharya is saying, Bhagavatam is saying. And on the other end, the Hridaya Daurbalyam, weakness of heart, because of which we are getting agitated, we are engaging in things. So constantly, and, praying to Guru, praying to Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, and constantly endeavoring on one end, on the other end, constantly trying to become more and more Krishna conscious. So this has to go on parallelly, which is why, if you do Mishra Bhakti, the problem with like most devotees in ISKCON do Karma Mishra, right? Little bit of Bhakti, a lot more of Karma, which is very, very difficult because mind gets absorbed only in Karma, right? But mind has to get engaged in Krishna. How will mind get engaged in Krishna if most of our time we are spending doing karma, and that also the result of which we don't use in Krishna service? I mean, we use very small part of it because of our own commitments, etc., etc. So then, how can we reach this stage? So we have to absorb as much as possible and go on, committing more and more time to Krishna consciousness, and then we can make substantial progress. Okay, anybody has any questions, thoughts? Okay, no thoughts. 2.61. तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्तासीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्य इन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. That the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaja Ambarisha. Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride, and therefore could not check his senses. We experienced this. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices, and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications. Now we should understand this, like this is very important. Many times we think we tolerate problems. We tolerate problems and we come out of it victorious only when we are like this. When we are actually engaging all our senses in Krishna service, actively, wholeheartedly, then we can tolerate all injustices. So the important thing is this, engaging like Amrish Maharaj, right? Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayor Vachamshi Vaikunta Gunanu Varnane Karau Harer Mandiramadyanadishu Shrutim Chakarachyuta Satkato Daye Mukunda Lingalayat Darshane Drisho Tadpritya Gatra Sparsha Sangamam Granam Chatat Pada Saroja Saurabe Srimat Tulasya Rasanam Tadarpite Padav Hare Kshetra Padanu Sarpane Chiro Rishikesha Padapi Vandane Kamam Chadasye Natu Kama Kameya Yatottama Shloka Janashaya Ratihi. King Ambarisha fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet, his tongue, lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs traveling to the holy places where the temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires is very important. Desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. All these qualifications made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How can one become Matpara is described in the life of Ambarisha Maharaj. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, a great scholar and Acharya in the line of the Matpara, remarks, Mad Bhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika Swatma Drishti Su Labheti Bhavaha. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the devotee, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu form simply waste, other than the Vishnu form, simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of God, the name of real yoga. The same topic is further being discussed. But clearly here Krishna is saying, fixes his consciousness upon. So that means that bhakti comes in. Right, till now, he had not mentioned this in context of this topic. But here clearly he's saying, you have to fix your consciousness upon. Like, who's the example? Amrish Maharaj. The way he lived, we should live. This kind of absorption is required. And most importantly, desires are what brings us to this material world. Desires are what can take us out of this material world. So desires have to be developed. And what kind of desires? Desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. How do we know what is the desires of the Lord? Represent are given to us by the desires of the Guru. So if we work to fulfill Yasya Prasadat Bhagavad Prasad, fulfill the desires of the Guru, then he'll be pleased, then the Lord will be pleased. Then pretty much everything else kind of will fall in line, because Guru's desire will be purely Krishna conscious, right? So that's how we should engage ourselves. Many times we think, okay, how do I don't know what are the desires of the Lord. No problem. We just understand the desires of the Guru. But that at least we should try. And I keep saying this many times, devotees get initiated. They don't have any contact with their Guru. They don't know what their Guru wants. They don't know how they should commit themselves to the service in the service of the Guru. And this is namesake initiation. This initiation is of no use. Because Diksha Kale Bhakta Kare Atma Samarpan. One has to sacrifice himself at the lotus feet of the Guru. That is surrender. Now, if we are surrendering to somebody and we don't know what that person expects from us, then what kind of a surrender is that? Yeah, I think then Prabhupada is just talking that about yoga, not Nothing void. It has to be on the Vishnu form. Okay. Any thoughts?